The thing they will remember from the COVID crisis is this is the moment when everything became monitored. That we agreed to be surveyed all the time, not just in authoritarian machines, but even in democracies.
Credo che noi assistiamo alla fine di un'epoca. L'epoca delle democrazie borghesi, con le loro costituzioni, con i loro parlamenti, i loro diritti, la divisione dei poteri.
We may have little influence on how the central banks decide about the future policies.
Where ministers of finance, regulators, central banks get together and they decide, I would say, the main rules of the game, I would say, for the international financial system.
Digital payment generates a lot of data. Those money can be precisely targeted for what kind of people can own and what kind of use this money can be utilized.
The goal is control.
Mi sembra che tutto fa pensare che la società che si vuole instaurare è una società fondata non sull'amore, sulla solidarietà, ma sulla distanza, sulla separazione, sul sospetto. Forse anche sull'odio. Però appunto la democrazia è la forma più fragile, quindi nulla è più facile che per una democrazia di scivolare.
Where is Mr. Globocap taking us? Where is this going? You know?
I think it's going to complete control. Mm-hmm. And when I say complete control, I think the decision has been made to use technology, which can be very invasive, to essentially move a human being from a sovereign individual into a natural resource, just like a barrel of oil or an acre of land.
The steps that they're taking now, how do these steps take us to this dystopian vision?
What they want to do is force everyone into the vaccinated group.
Okay.
So they're trying to make it as painful and horrible to stay outside. You're going to lose your job. You can't go to school. You can't travel. Da, 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 da. All these are marketing techniques to try and get people into the corral. And part of it has nothing to do with anything other than they need the vaccine passports. The vaccine passports are their way of creating a new financial transaction control system without people realizing, oh, this is a new financial control system. But they've got to get everybody in for the system to work. Every person needs to understand whatever they think about the vaccinations.
Yeah.
If you adopt vaccine passports, it is the end of human liberty. It is the end of human liberty. You cannot go back. We are talking about the end.
Yeah. And this is the drum that I've been beating. You know, I don't care. You believe whatever you want. Believe the official narrative as if it were the word of God is fine. All I want you to do is stand up and oppose this, blatantly unnecessary, right, segregation system and digital monitoring system. Once those vaccine passports are locked into place, then what happens?
You're a slave.
Yeah, take us the next step, though.
Well, it will roll down in different ways in different places, but essentially you will wake up, you will be under 24/7 surveillance. The rules that are enforced against you through the system will be made up arbitrarily on a central basis, and they'll be related to how you're useful as a member of a livestock group. And whatever freedoms you enjoy right now will be severely, severely limited. First of all, you now have a digital wallet, and they are free to put money in and take it out whenever they want. And if you don't behave, there's rules constantly, and there are new rules constantly being added, and you have to do whatever those rules are, or your money will be shut off and you can't buy groceries.
Right.
Let's say you're limited to 5 kilometers from your home.
Right.
If you try and drive more than 5 kilometers, your car stops.
Right.
Or your credit card doesn't work.
Right.
So we're talking about complete digital 24/7 surveillance and control. and the integration of digital technology into your body. It's not just the barcode on your refrigerator, it's the barcode on you.
Yeah, and in some countries, people are already playing with this, or already getting some sort of digital tattoos or something.
So the Chinese are working with the social credit system, and I think the Chinese process with social credit is one of the most important experiments. But you're seeing different efforts through the digital ID system to take a population, this is happening in Africa, and put everybody on the blockchain. And so a blockchain is created that represents you. Think of this as sort of the digital version of Akashic Records.
Yeah.
And you have your own place on the blockchain, and everything you do, everything you say, some people say even everything you think, can be incorporated in a complete digital record on your blockchain. So there's no privacy, and there's also a complete digital record of everything you did and said. I think you will be surprised once you're in that system how quickly they'll be free to move, and there's nothing you can do.
What you're talking about is, a real, I mean, this is a real Orwellian, vision, basically,
Yes.
where the powers that be are just flat out, just brazenly totalitarian and openly.
It's more than totalitarian, because in totalitarianism, you have a few people who want to control the many.
Yeah.
Now we're talking about a few people who view themselves as a different species, and you as livestock. It's using a new technology to fundamentally change what a human is and how a human operates. So, for example, if you want to integrate robots into the labor system, and you want to have one labor system for everything from a human to a cyborg to a robot, what you do is you delete sex. So we see the American Medical Association lobbying to remove sex from your birth certificate because they don't want that to prejudice what sex you decide you want to be.
How does that play into the robot thing?
We have a labor and taxation system.
Right.
Correct. For humans. If you replace humans with robots, you're going to have to provide for that.
Right, okay.
Okay. Then you have a cyborg, which is a mixture of human and robots, and it gets very complicated, which is which.
Right.
And so it's very inexpensive and very simplifying to say, something will just have one system. Part of this image of human as a natural resource is literally being able to change sex back and forth, and there's a real effort to experiment with that now.
If we forget about the robots for a second.
Right.
I'm
so
just
I want
trying
to
to
go back
hang
to
with
children,
you, but keep
because
going with your vision.
I think the most sensitive issue here is children. One thing that Mr. Global has never been able to defeat until very recently is the relationship between a mother and a child.
Right.
And what they have found is the most dangerous political force on the planet is mothers. And parents and mothers have deep commitment to protect their children. And they will not permit certain things to go on. And that means if you want those things to go on, you've got to get rid of the family, and you've got to get rid of loyalties between people in a family, and you've got to create the control mechanisms so you can turn families against each other. Mm-hmm. That means they may also, one of my big questions about these injections is we've seen real indication that the lipid toxicity creates sterility in women. It makes the ovaries, the toxicity attacks the ovaries. One of my questions is, are they looking to literally say, you need permission to have a baby, and if you have a baby, it will be our designer baby. We choose the genetics, not you. So if people want to have children, you have designer babies, but then as a legal matter, that designer baby belongs to Mr. Global, not to you. And they can and will do anything.
What I'm struggling with, Count, is I'm struggling to see this as a functioning society, and I mean global capitalism, Globocap, what I call it, cannot function as a full-blown, blatant totalitarian system. It needs this veneer. It needs the simulation of democracy. It needs the simulation. If it takes the simulation away, it isn't what it is anymore. It is just blatant totalitarianism.
That is true until they get 7 billion people on smartphones with wallets on universal basic income, and then they can.
What you're talking about is a radically different model where that is no longer what is happening, that the vast majority of people are really no longer consumers, or not to any significant extent. The way I understand the whole global capitalist system is if you dry up consumption, if consumption disappears, the system falls apart. Am I wrong?
Yeah, you're wrong.
Okay, tell me.
So I'm not saying that they won't keep it going. We don't know. We don't know once they have that control, the level of consumption. We know that they're rolling out another op called climate change.
Yeah.
And if you look at the basis of what they say they want, they're talking about either radical reduction in the size of the population or radical reduction in the per capita income of the average person. We don't know which it is, or a combination of both.
Okay.
But whatever they're talking about, it's not the delightful consumer society that many of us have enjoyed for the last 50 years.
Right now, what Mr. Global is telling everybody is, no, you're not slaves. You're free. You're empowered people.
Right.
You're in a free society that is full of possibilities and abundance. And I don't see the point where Mr. Global, where it's advantageous to Mr. Global to suddenly announce to everybody, oh, no, you're not free people. You're all a bunch of slaves, and I control you, and you'll do what I say, or I'll crush you.
So everything that we're watching indicates that Mr. Global would much prefer 7 billion happy, mind-controlled people than 7 billion, basically, people who knew they were slaves and felt, unhappy.
Right.
So we see the World Economic Forum say it's 2030, you have no assets, but you're happy.
That's
Meaning,
right.
It's 2030, we've taken all your assets and you have no power whatsoever.
Right.
But you're mind controlled and you're happy. Okay, so we don't know if the vision is one of, everybody's dancing on drugs all day long and mind controlled and very happy, or thinks they're very happy. Or we've got a dystopic vision of people being tortured with the high-tech digital whipping machine. What we know is they want each human being, instead of resonating with life and each other, to resonate with their machine.
Okay.
And this gets us back to the invention. The machine is going to invent a simulation. Do they want the humans participating in the creation of that simulation or not? Which relates to how pleasant will they allow life to be in the general population, and how many people will they want in the general population? And we don't know the answer to that question.
Yeah. I absolutely believe that the simulation of democracy is essential to this power structure, and it's the reason that GloboCap can't just manage everything directly. There has to be an Obama, a Trump, a Biden. There has to be somebody, pretending to be, in charge.
There has to be a story.
Yes.
There has to be an adult fairy tale.
And that story is democracy. And that story is, you don't live under despotism. You live in a democracy where you have, power as a citizen and as a consumer. Yeah.
But that story of democracy only works if you get your check. That's the story of the red button. If they don't get their check, they're not willing to play along with this simulation.
Right. What I'm saying is, we're not being oppressed with brute force, right? We're being oppressed with propaganda and mystification and persuasion and marketing, because they can't afford to oppress us with brute force.
I completely disagree.
Go ahead.
So you use brute force, but you use it in much more invisible and sophisticated ways. Mm-hmm. So if you can control with incentives, if you can control with mind control and entrainment, mm-hmm. if you can control with propaganda, if you can control with, cutting off bank accounts, mm-hmm. you much prefer to do it that way, because then it's invisible. It's not as, it's not the same as gunning people down at Tiananmen Square. Okay? So you don't want to use brute force, which is why when you do use force, you use poisoning. You use electromagnetic weaponry. You use, satellite weaponry that produces fires, and you go, oh, it was a fire. You use things that look like natural disasters. So if you look at the brute force that's being used, we see 5 presidents pretty clearly assassinated who wouldn't go along with the COVID-19 narrative. Okay. Other presidents who are basically thrown out in the next election. That's brute force.
Maybe that's a good point for me to make the distinction. In a despotic system, I go and kill them, right? And I want everyone to know I killed them. Hi.
Right.
We killed them because they weren't following orders. Everybody got that?
So in this system,
Let me finish my thought. In a global capitalist system, we don't want to announce, hey, we killed those guys because they weren't following orders.
Right.
Well, we just, oh no, they had a heart attack.
Right.
This guy had a heart attack. He had a car accident, right? And the reason we do that is because the system won't function despotically. If I announce, oh yeah, we whacked that guy because he wouldn't do it, and then people are like, well, wait a minute, then we're living in a despotic system, and then let's storm the Bastille.
So let me go back to the stock market.
Okay.
The reason you have to pretend that they had a heart attack instead of you killed them is your whole global cap system depends on financial liquidity. And financial liquidity depends on the rule of law. So let me give you an example. If I run a narcotics trafficking operation, I have a high profit margin. But the problem is I can't get my stock listed on the stock exchange and publicly trade my profits.
Right.
But if I have a food franchise company, I can list it on the stock exchange, and for every $1 I make, my stock goes up $20.
Sure.
I have financial leverage. I can lever that with debt, and make it go up. I can get it almost to infinity with all the leverage. So being legit gives me fantastic financial leverage, whereas organized crime gives me great margins. How do I get the best of both worlds? I get the best of both worlds by, laundering my money through the franchise restaurant company, and now I have both. But I have to protect the image of the rule of law, because otherwise I lose my financial leverage.
Right.
It's critical in this conversation that you understand that it is the general population that is building the train tracks of tyranny here.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
We are doing this, all of us. We are building.
Sure. And I don't doubt that the kind of stuff that you're talking about will happen here and there. It's what I'm having trouble with is the entire model itself. And maybe imagine I'm the slave of the dystopian future. How does Mr. Global exploit me? What does Mr. Global get out of me in that position?
Here's what I finally just realized.
Yeah.
You've clearly thought about this. What I've thought about is that either I'm going to be part of stopping it and we stop it,
Yeah.
or I'm going to be dead. It never occurred to me that I'm going to live in that world. And so I never think about it because I don't need to worry about the details of what happens if I fail.
What I'm trying to imagine is I try to get inside of Mr. Global's head and say, okay, I'm going to turn, all these billions of people into slaves. You get the $1,000, you get Netflix, and you do what I say, or I will punish the shit out of you.
If we really are the Truman Show,
Yeah.
what's the show that will? You're a playwright.
Yeah.
What's the show that will sell in the Palladies? Will the whipping machine sell, or will it's 2030 and you're completely mind controlled sell?
Well, I don't know. I can't get there. I can't see how it works.
Buddha says, with our thoughts, we invent our world.
Yeah.
And the fundamental defining characteristic of America, I'm an American, I grew up in America, is faith, not in a religious or spiritual sense, although spiritual it is, but faith that the future can work, faith that we can do it. It's just the way we were brought up, is to have faith in what was possible, what we could do, and in the future. Think of this as it's a kind of It's a choice. And that's why, to me, it's so important to not let the effort to create a sense of hopelessness and inevitable, oh, we have to do with Mr. Global. Well, really, if we had to do with Mr. Global says, and there's no hope, why is Mr. Global so scared? And I reject it. It's just like, okay, that's your plan. It's not my plan. I have faith.
Yeah. Let me tell you my dystopian vision, and then keep in mind, Catherine, I'm
Right.
talking.
I get
I'm
it.
talking on this broad ideological level, right? And I'm going to oversimplify the hell out of this. Okay, so don't get me on every little thing, because I'm over. We had a despotic world. It was ruled by kings and czars and emperors and what have you. And it worked that way. You do what we say, or we'll kill you and beat the hell out of you. And global capitalism came in, and it
The merchant class has said, let us run it.
They deconstructed that world, and what they did is they changed the functioning of value. And now, instead of the king saying, this pen is worth, £5, or the church saying, this pen is, literally the pen of God.
Right.
And it is, and if you don't believe it, we'll kill you,
Right.
and torture you until you say it is. That's the despotic function. And capitalism came along, and this is where all the leftists, all my leftist compatriots, go nuts, because they say, what a beautiful machine. What it did is it deconstructed that value system, and it created a value system where, what that pen is worth? That pen is worth whatever the market says it's worth.
Right.
Right? And the king doesn't have anything to do with it. And so suddenly the way value works in our society changes radically, fundamentally. And
It's
now,
driven by price.
And yes, and
Right.
it's driven by supply and demand. It's driven by exchange value. We have our own values. Religions have their own values, subsets. But the society as a whole had switched from a despotic value system to a value system that was based on exchange value. Right? Beautiful, wonderful machine, capitalism. I don't want to live in despotism.
Right.
you know? And so here was that great machine, and we used that machine to actually kind of create semi-democratic societies.
Yeah. It was quite amazing.
It absolutely, and we did it in large part with that machine, also with ideas and communication and what have you. But this machine did it because this machine prevented, the Queen of England from jumping up and saying, you must do this. No, actually, because power and values resided here. Ideologically, what the machine does is erases despotic values. And when I look at the evolution and the development of capitalism into its global capitalist phase now, right? What I see is this despotic value decoding machine.
Right.
And I can even translate that into, what was happening in the Middle East. Okay, the Cold War ended, the old tension between, the two superpowers disappeared. What did GloboCap do? It's like, what's going on in the Middle East? Oh, these crazy people actually are trying to, have societies function based on their religious values. You can have religion in our society, in the United States, that's fine, as long as you don't live it. So you can believe it, you can let me do my spiel. You can believe it, you can teach it to your kids, you can believe it in your heart, but go try to give all you have to the poor. Go try to actually live it in the world. You cannot do it. And so GloboCap moves into the Middle East, and it's like, guys, Saudi Arabia, please, you can be devout Muslims and believe all that kind of stuff, but you gotta play ball with us. At the end of the day, the values that you live have to come down to
God is for the weekend.
Exactly. Right. Exchange value. And so I see capitalism, and especially global capitalism, as this despotic values decoding machine. And I see those values as despotic values.
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely.
You know, families decide, traditional families decide, you know, that, you know, men are men, women are women, men don't have babies. You know, these are values that we create. Individuals, communities, societies, religions create these values, and they don't work. Essentially, this machine, which was this incredibly useful and, you know, miraculous machine, really, to take despotism apart. When societies were using it, when we were using it as a tool, right, to create wealth, to create freedom in the society that we wanted to live at, okay, big, powerful, like all powerful machines, it's dangerous. But as long as we know how to control it and we use it to benefit us, we can do great things with it, right? I think we lost control. That, you know, if the capitalist engine, if the capitalist machine is the horse and we were driving the cart, you know, we let go of the reins. And it's not even that you know, that the horse is driving. It's, I guess I don't see all of the plans, the despotic plans that you see. What I see is this machine that we have taken our hands off, you know. I see the machine driving itself, continuing to wipe out values, continuing, you know, just destroying societies and wiping out values, destroying meaning. I don't think it knows where it's going. I think all it knows how to do is erase and decode all these values. And of course, because it's just a machine.
So the problem you describe is real. You do have an out-of-control machine.
Yeah.
But I assure you, if you look at the leadership, there are multiple long-term plans. You have very capable and intelligent people. They have the power to change things. And one of the reasons you know that is if you look at how centralized, in the central banking warfare model, if you look at how centralized the central banking aspect is, and how centralized the military aspect is, there are very few people who can field a global satellite system and space weaponry. You know, it's a very small group. And once you have that kind of invisible weaponry and power, very few can control the many as long as you keep it secret and invisible, which they have. And so if you look at the physical force being applied through space and through the sort of secret national security state, you know, this is not an out-of-control machine that they control.
Let me clarify what I said, because I don't doubt any of what you just said,
Right.
You know, for a second. I absolutely believe that those guys, those people that you're talking about, believe that they are driving the cart.
Yes.
And believe that they are executing their plans, absolutely have visions, they have goals, they're
And they're very intelligent and very confident.
absolutely
Right.
no disagreement
Right.
whatsoever. What I'm looking at is the evolution of the system itself. And what I believe is that you could replace each one of those individuals that you were just talking about. You could go in and just fire them all today, right? And they would be replaced with other individuals who would execute, who would follow more or less exactly the same plans, because the system itself demands it. If you follow my model, you know, as broad and as general as it is, it seems to me that the solution, the answer to, you know, how we stop this, is pretty simple.
Or not stop it, just turn it.
Yeah, change it. In my model, what's happening is, you know, this machine is in charge and is driving, and the people at the top who absolutely have plans and believe that they're running it, you know, are not, because the decisions that they're making are made within the context of the conceptual territory that the machine has provided for them. They know the limits. By the time they get to the place where they can make those plans and make those decisions, you know, their imaginations have been curtailed and limited to the extent that they're operating within the logic of the machine in the first place. In that model, the only way it changes, I won't say stop it, the only way it changes is if we regain control of the machine. And what that means is being willing to assert our values, to being willing to once again say, no, I'm not advocating this because it's a physical fact, from a science book. I want to have a society that does this. And everybody in my community and society wants the society to work that way. And even if it doesn't make financial sense, even if it screws up the market, even if it limits, this, our values, our religious values, our social values, our family values, whatever values that we have as a community are more important than the efficient operation of this machine. Right. And again, I'm probably not a Marxist anymore. It's like I can't see the attraction today of destroying this machine. What I can see the attraction of is us regaining control of it and using it to benefit society rather than it using us to benefit itself. That's the essence of the way I think we change things. What I'm wondering is whether your vision contains more hope for us than mine. And I have a feeling that mine is actually less hopeful or less open to change than yours.
I think the only difference between our vision is when does the opportunity to reverse the course close? That's the big difference. And you think the opportunity to turn this is longer than I do.
Interesting.
So one of my favorite scripture is lines from scripture is faith is the substance of things hoped for but not yet seen. And that's why, to me, it's so important to not let the effort to create a sense of hopelessness and inevitable, we have to do with Mr. Global. Well, really, if we had to do with Mr. Global says, and there's no hope, why is Mr. Global so scared? Right. If we see somebody doing something that we feel is bad, we will shun them. And in my opinion, shunning is the most powerful political tactic ever. If I can tell that someone is a dirty player, I will shun them. The human race will shun the bad guys if they can understand who the bad guys are.
If they can see them.
The beauty of the simulation is it always holds the bad guys out to be the heroes.
Yeah.
Right. And that is the inversion which has got us trapped. The minute people can see who the bad guys are, then the boycott will work. And where boycotts have worked or shunning has worked, it's been magical. Because it really changes the field at a deep and intimate level.
It's great. And I can't help but think of, the track that I'm on right now.
Right.
I'm trying to punch a hole through the simulation in terms of the official narrative around, vaccination pass system. And what I'm trying to do is shove pictures of segregation in people's faces, and say, this is what this is. You remember this ugly stuff that you were against and that you hated before? That's what's actually,
Do they understand this will be used to control them spatially and financially?
No.
How do we get them to see that?
I don't know. I'm still working on the one level just to punch a hole in the simulation where it's like, it's I read an article in The Guardian where they did coverage on, an Italian cafe owner, who is, saying, oh yes, it's an inconvenience now and I have to, check for the vaccine passes and everything, it's a little annoying. And the whole thing was presented as if just an extra little piece of, bureaucracy that was now annoying. Instead of the imposition of a global segregation system.
Right.
I'm just trying to punch holes in that in that official narrative to get people to understand, yeah, it is actually a segregation system, right? And then I hope they can start asking the questions of why and where is it going.
If you describe it as a segregation system, somebody who thinks they can be included and not segregated against, not excluded, will think, well, it's a segregation system, it's terrible, but I'm okay because I'm in. What they don't understand is, no, this is a system. The segregation is, we are going to relieve you of your assets. You're in the group that will be relieved of your assets. And any political power you think you have, or any consumer power you think you have, you're going to be relieved of everything, and you're going to be in the excluded class.
My experience is that people won't hear it. They will not follow the logic out and see where it's going.
Right.
What I focus on is changing the way, we look at these things, changing the way we're perceiving what's happening.
So I've always believed that the general population cannot defeat Mr. Global.
Yeah.
I've always believed that what will defeat Mr. Global is what I call the Midianite thing. It comes from the story from the Bible of the story of Gideon, who throws the Midianites out of Israel. Gideon's army comes down the side of the mountain with lanterns and pitchers, and the Midianites are so hateful and distrustful and suspicious of each other, they jump up in the dark and kill each other. Yeah. Now, if you look at the digital financial system that's being designed out, you have a lot of people jumping in the space because it's like a gold rush. Mm-hmm. But you also have a tremendous number of companies that are going to watch their fees and their spreads be squeezed. Okay. So you have a huge pot of cash flow and credit that's up in the air, and the competition is going to be enormous. And I think, there's a reasonably good chance that the bad guys will kill each other. Oh. The more we withdraw, the more our energy stays out, and they have nothing but to fight with each other. People and institutions that don't have integrity, get them out of your life.
Right.
Suddenly, you are transacting with people where there is an intimacy.
Yeah.
One of my favorite preachers says, intimacy, into me see. Mm-hmm. And suddenly the people who have an intimate picture into your transactions are people you can trust, and it feels fantastic. And it makes an enormous, it doesn't just make a financial difference, it makes an enormous energetic difference that I struggle to explain.
What you just described is a practical thing that people can do. Just suck your money out of the bank, out of Bank of America,
and
or
put
wherever.
it into that which is healthy. The more we can do that in local communities, the more we can build local food systems, local energy systems, the more we can tell these people to go jump in a lake.
Yeah.
Right.
And this is a concrete, practical thing. Anyone can sit down, and just draw up a list of where am I connected, where am I feeding the machine, right? Where am I funding?
Where is my opportunity to significantly produce my quality of life, the quality of my food, the reliability of my energy by disintermediating the big corrupt companies out of my life.
Yep.
Get them out of your life.
You've got a lot more practical ideas than I do about this. And a lot of my ideas really are about changing people's heads and changing the way people look at things. People read my columns and sometimes they write to me and it's like, Jesus, CJ, you've just, depressed the hell out of me with all this stuff. What can we do? What can we do? What can we do? The one thing that I've been floating out is organized, classical, nonviolent civil disobedience.
Right.
You mentioned the people who can't see, who feel like, I'm vaccinated, I'm fine, it's not going to affect me. And you're saying, they can't see where it's going to go, and you're not going to be fine, and they can. The reason that I'm latching on to the classic nonviolent civil disobedience tactic, it's aimed at what I believe is still the larger mass of people, right, who are just going along because they want to stay normal. They don't want to be conspiracy theorist freaks, on the margin. They want to be in the north. They don't want to be ostracized from their families and lose their jobs, and they're just going along. These are the same people that the civil rights activists had to move, had to activate in order to create the popular support for ending segregation. And how did they do it? Mm-hmm. They did it by making the ugliness of segregation visible. They didn't fight, they didn't scream, they were disciplined, and they marched up to school, the young black teenagers, and took the abuse. Right. And they filmed it. And they showed it to this larger mass of people and said, this is what you're supporting. And it didn't happen overnight, but month after month and year after year, you talk about faith. I still have faith in the masses of people. I believe the majority of people, if I can show them, if we can show them, if we can create that transparency that you're talking about and show the ugliness of what this is, it puts people in a double bind. It puts them in a vice where on the one side, oh my God, if I don't follow orders, I'm going to be punished. But if I do follow orders, I'm going to be those ugly segregationists, and I can't live with that as my self-image. And eventually, I have faith that it shifts.
And while there's anger here at the restrictions, scientists advising the government fear that slight relaxation
131 Strafanzeigen.
Throwing stuff now, and okay, they're shooting. They're now shooting. There are kids here. This is an absolute disgrace to the Shire Remembrance.
Hundreds of police officers and mounted units, but still they came, those protesters defying the authorities. Public gatherings are banned.
To protect the most vulnerable and also avoid fresh lockdowns.
Tell me what law I've broken. You cannot tell me any law that I've broken.
Ungeimpfte ab einem Alter von 12 Jahren dürfen nur noch in Ausnahmefällen vor die Tür.
That vaccine paperwork is now required to visit monuments and museums, and soon cafes and restaurants too.
Trucks lined roadways leading into Canada's capital, Ottawa, on Saturday as drivers staged a massive protest against Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's COVID-19 vaccine mandates.
We are a peaceful bunch. We're here for one reason. We're here to end mandates, and we want to do it peacefully.